Hello there everyone, your fluffy armchair Admiral Latur is back with some more hot ship action. In today's episode of Lots of Guns, we are going to be looking at one of the iconic pre-Dreadnought battleships. She fought in both world wars, also being the first one to open fire during second one. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the first time featured on this channel German Kaiserliche Marine Deutschland class pre-Dreadnought battleship Schleswig-Holstein. You should basically see it right now on your screens. So, it may not be exact copy of it, but I did my best to recreate it in the game. As always, let's start from looking at her parameters and talk a bit about the build. And then we'll take her and other 4 Deutschland class battleships for a spin and face against 5 British battleships from year 1900. So, while building my ship, I've tried to base her parameters mostly on class specific parameters or class average parameters. Instead of specific parameters for Schleswig-Holstein. This is because all 5 ships of the class had those parameters slightly different, with let's say Schleswig-Holstein being the fastest one in her class, for example. So instead of starting all-out war with anyone, or before somebody will comment on this video saying that those parameters are completely wrong and they can find something different for Schleswig-Holstein specifically. Yes, those parameters will be slightly different because they are based on Deutschland class pre-Dreadnought battleships instead of on Schleswig-Holstein herself. Right. So, starting off from general parameters. Deutschland class displaced between 13,200 and 14,200 tons. So that's basically what I managed to achieve. In my case, that's 14,072 tons. Speed up to 18.5 knots for class. For Schleswig-Holstein it was about 19 knots because she was obviously the fastest one. She had a decent range of like 8,900 kilometers at 10 knots. That's why I've set her range to long. And that's what basically influenced that weight. She had a pretty much standard set of bulkheads. According to Wikipedia, for this class, those ships were divided into like 12 compartments. They were watertight, obviously. So I've tried to set my bulkheads to standard. Ships also had a double hull bottom, so that's what I've set. In terms of propulsion, it was a triple expansion steam engine with 12 water tube boilers fired with coal. I do apologize for that. When it comes to protection, she was protected with crab cemented armor, had 9.8 thick barbets, before mentioned double hull bottom, pretty much most basic anti-float system, or at least from what I know, she had like most standard anti-float system, which basically consisted watertight bulkheads, which were also reinforced with like a cork layer between those bulkheads, so in case there was like a penetration from enemy fire, those bulkheads actually managed to hold water, and the crew could actually at some point balance out how much water there is in different compartments. Right. Where I was... Oh, yes. When it comes to Citadel, I gave her Citadel 1, mostly because some sections of armor were reinforced with teak. So to simulate that, I just gave that ship Citadel 1, which is not super protective in the game. It's not super modern technology. It will still be penetrable by the ships that I will face, and it won't give me super edge, but it will like somewhat simulate that there is some sort of technology that gives me extra protection. Right, when it comes to armor values, these are as follows. 9.4 inch belt armor, which is pretty much middle section. 3.9 inch extended armor, which is fore and aft section of belt armor. Not super protective, to be fair. Deck was 1.6 inch thick at the whole length, so that's what I've said. Conning tower was the most protected part of the ship, with 12 inch of armor. Turrets were protected by 11 inch armor on sides and 2 inch armor on top. And as I couldn't find any information about secondary guns armor, I've just set it to 5.5 inch. Right, when it comes to armament, we are going to use normal shells with standard load. Same will go to 17 inch torpedoes. We are going to use standard load and standard torpedo propulsion. When it comes to propellant, originally at that time the guns that were used on the ship were using tube powder. Unfortunately, as you can see, it's not available for us. So the next one, which is closest to have similar like properties, is ballisted, and that's what we are going to use. Right. As for gun layout and general ship build, these were as follows. She had 2 double 11 inch guns, one at the front and one at the back of the ship. So that's what we managed to squeeze on this one. There were also 14 6.7 inch guns in casemates. Unfortunately, I don't have enough casemates on this hull, even if I extend it fully. So I replaced them with 8 6-inch secondary guns and 6 6-inch casemate guns, which gives me 14 guns in total. When it comes to smaller caliber guns, Schleswig-Holstein had 22 3.5 inch, which I managed to squeeze only 16 of, and I had to tone them down to 3 inch as we don't have half inch calibers. So I got 16 3-inch guns on this ship, and that's basically it. If it comes to guns, she also had 3 funnels, at least originally. Later on, during one of the late refits, which happened shortly before Second World War, a front funnel was basically connected with the second one, and basically everything was toned down to only 2 funnels. And that basically concludes our walk through the build. And there's not much else to say, so without any further ado, let's get the battle started, shall we? Right, so the battle has started. Okay, enemy ships are to the north, which is very convenient for us. I will just detach the ships from the groups, because it's much easier for me to actually command them, as the groups tend to work really bad. Okay, so we got Schleswig-Holstein, Kronprinz, Mecklenburg, Wurz, and whatever that is, Agir. Those are quite weird names. Oh dear, I'm sorry, I'm a bit ill, so you will have to survive with some of my voices. Right. I will try to join all my forces and set them in pretty much like a long line formation if I can. I will also try to slow down a bit. I will have to go really close combat with the enemy, and so as we are approaching, I will just go head on onto enemy, and basically rush them, and that's going to be my strategy for this battle. If I'm going to stay at long range, I will most likely struggle to hit the enemy, as you can basically see. The accuracy of my guns is pretty terrible, and that's how it's going to go. So as we are approaching the enemy, I will just increase speed to 2. Let's talk a bit about history of that ship, because that's quite interesting story. So Schleswig-Holstein was one of the Deutschland-class pre-Dreadnought battleships. She was laid down in August 1905 and commissioned in July 1908. Unfortunately, due to launch of HMS Dreadnoughts in 1906, Schleswig-Holstein was basically obsolete when it was commissioned. So that's, well, I've already said about that, but yeah, though they were called 5-minute battleships by German Navy, and basically the reason for that was because as soon as HMS Dreadnought was launched and German Navy already bought like 10 or 20 battleships of pretty much similar class to Deutschland, they had a whole bunch of obsolete battleships that were expected to survive about 5 minutes in actual true combat. Hence why they've called it, or they've called them 5-minute battleships. Anyway, until First World War, Schleswig-Holstein was basically moved between 2nd Battle Squadron of High Seas Fleet and Training Regiment. With the outbreak of First World War, Schleswig-Holstein and rest of 2nd Battle Squadron were initially assigned to guard mouth of Elbe River. Later, she was taking part in like a cover mission for 1st Scouting Group during bombardments of Scarborough, Hartlepool, and Whitby. She also participated in a fleet advance to the Dogger Bank and few other small operations. And basically, she haven't seen too much action until 1916, when she took part in Battle of Jutland, when she was mostly at the rear. That's mostly due to some of maneuvers that German Navy or German Admiralty has developed, but they've never actually performed it in combat operations. So eventually, second battle group or battle squadron got a bit lost in that battle. They failed to properly execute that maneuver, and they ended up being somewhere at the end of the formation for most of the time, basically. Eventually, during entire Battle of Jutland, which lasted for about 2 days, I think, Schleswig-Holstein managed to fire only 20 shells. Literally. She fired 20 shells. She got hit once by high caliber shell, and eventually, after Battle of Jutland, she was sent for repairs. After she got repaired, she never returned to active duty until end of First World War. She was used as a target for U-boats. She was eventually decommissioned, and yeah, she never seen any further action until end of World War I. However, after First World War, as we all already know, due to Treaty of Versailles, Germany wasn't allowed to actually have a high-tech fleet or very heavy fleet. So eventually in 1926, after refit, Schleswig-Holstein managed to be recommissioned and returned to German Navy as a new flagship. Between 1926 and 1927, she was basically sent into like a training cruise into the Atlantic Ocean, and she also visited several different ports around Spanish coast, including Mediterranean ones. She remained as a fleet flagship until 22nd September of 1935. That's mostly because obviously Adolf Hitler managed to make some changes to German Navy. Eventually Kriegsmarine was introduced. Also in 1933, new version of Deutschland's class Panzerschiff was introduced. So basically there was no more space for Schleswig-Holstein and one of her sister ships that was also in German Navy. But she remained in active duty, just to be clear. She just got repurposed, and basically she was a training ship from now on. Um, and she basically remained as a training ship until 1939, when in August she was positioned in port of Danzig under disguise of ceremonial visit. And as we all already know, at 4:47 a.m. on 1st of September 1939, Schleswig-Holstein was first to open fire upon Polish position at Westerplatte, and by doing so, she also fired a first shots of Second World War. So, even though she was a bit too old, she actually managed to find herself a space in modern conflict, which is pretty impressive for such an old ship. And basically, 35 years after she was laid down, she was still in active duty, and after a few modernizations, she was still fighting. Anyway, later on during September campaign, after initial bombardment of Westerplatte, she was also sent to bombard Polish positions at Hel and Radłowo. After campaign in Poland, when Poland surrendered, Schleswig-Holstein took part in invasion of Denmark in 1940, and after that, she was basically decommissioned and transferred to training duties. And she basically remained in that role until early 1944, when she was again recommissioned. She was slightly upgraded in terms of AA protection, and basically that was her role. She was supposed to become like a screening ship for German Navy. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. Very soon after she was upgraded and recommissioned in 1944, she eventually got targeted by Royal Air Force and sank. Thankfully, she sank somewhere near Polish coast in shallow waters, so the crew was just sent to basic like land operations. And when Soviets eventually captured location where Schleswig-Holstein has sunk after the war, they basically raised her from the sea bottom and reassigned her to become a practice target. And she remained as a practice target quite long. Last time she was used in 1966 as a practice target, and she's currently laying on the bottom of shallow waters somewhere off the island of Osmusar or something like that in Gulf of Finland. So she's somewhere in the Baltic Sea, and her bell is in fact held in the collection of the Military History Museum of the Bundeswehr in Dresden. So you can see it for yourself if you visit such museum. And that's basically it if it comes to history of that ship. Right, so let's focus on our battle situation, shall we? As you've probably noticed, I've been mostly focused on reading my notes, so I wasn't actually paying attention to the battle. I'll be honest with you. But my crazy rush actually succeeded, and from 5 enemy ships, only 2 remain in action at this moment. Schleswig-Holstein, who is leading ship of the charge, seems to be in pretty good condition. However, Kronprinz is, well, she's not doing good. She's heavily damaged. Her floatability is seriously at risk. Many compartments are actually flooded, and she seems to be the heaviest damaged ship in my small fleet. Any other ship seems to be doing pretty well, which is very, very surprising for me. So we are most likely going to win this battle. Remaining 2 British battleships, which are Barfleur and Orion, are trying to flee. So my entire fleet is trying to basically chase what remains from enemy fleets. I'm actually super surprised that this strategy works so well. I was hoping that enemy fleet will put up a bit more of a fight. Okay. Enemy seems to be sinking really fast. Yeah, Orion is basically dead. I don't think she's going to survive that. Yeah, she's gone. Okay, so there's only 1 enemy battleship left. It's Barfleur. However, her floatability is already seriously reduced, and hopefully a couple more shots or a couple more lucky shots will send her to the sea bottom. Oh, come on, sink already. Well, that's actually quite interesting project. How many funnels does she have? She has like 5 funnels. That was quite interesting project, to be fair. Right, I'm not going to play it again. That was basically my setup. So I had slight advantage. However, last time I've set it up to 1905. It turns up I was at a heavy disadvantage, and my ships basically didn't even make it to get anywhere near enemy, and I haven't even hit them once. So those custom battles are going pretty randomly. Every time I do tests of my ships, they tend to go really bad, and every time I start to record video, it tends to go absolutely amazing, and I'm just smashing through the battle. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you want to get informed about my new uploads, hit that notification bell button, and don't forget to share your comments down below. Have a great day and see you all later. Later, out.